Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's The World This Week in partnership with The Daily Beast. Foreign editor Christopher Dickey is with us. With us as well, Mira Kamdar, editorial writer for The New York Times. And we're in the company of Franco-Syrian photojournalist Amr Abed Rabo, Pierre Aski, co-founder of the news website Rue 89, and his latest book is The Right to Happiness, Le Droit au Bonheur in French. This Friday marks the first anniversary of the death of Jo Cox, a Labour MP shot dead by a far-right supporter in her home constituency days before the Brexit referendum. The murder sparked soul-searching in the UK over what had been an unusually bitter and caustic campaign. Over in the United States this week, there are similar calls to, well, tone it down after a Bernie Sanders supporter opened fire on congressmen and their staff preparing for a charity baseball game practice. On Wednesday, President Trump visited senior Republican lawmaker Steve Scalise in hospital, the Louisiana congressman in critical condition. However, Thursday, here's what the same Donald Trump was tweeting. Crooked H, for Hillary, destroyed phones with hammer, bleached emails, and had husband meet with Attorney General days before she was cleared, and they talk about obstruction. The caustic tweets continuing, Mira Kamdar, despite this call for more civility in politics.
I don't think anyone understands that man's mind, and he shoots off his mouth with whatever pops into his head. His advisors aren't able to control him. His attorneys apparently aren't able to control him. It's absolutely stunning. And I think for him, there's probably what happened with the shooting is completely separate and different from what he considers to be a witch hunt against his person in the ongoing investigations. So I don't think he sees any connection there. And I don't think that he understands that in the kind of hate-filled rhetoric that he peddled even during the campaign, that he's contributed to ratcheting up a level of vituperativeness and violence in public discourse and public space that
does have an impact.
That has an impact, and well, it's dangerous to make a direct link to any individual episode. This person who did the shooting was apparently pretty deranged. Our paper takes a position that the problem in the United States is gun control. We're now at 184 shootings at 165 days into the year. On the same day as that shooting, a man opened fire in a UPS center in San Francisco and killed 3 people before killing himself. The shooter in Virginia, you can just buy a gun. There are no background checks. Anybody can have one. It's very open carry is very easy. So, the country is awash with weapons, and anybody who goes off the deep end, whatever they're inspired by, has a gun at hand.
That's not going to change. It seems like we have this discussion.
No, quite the reverse. I mean, I think I talked about this on the show some months ago. After the election, and given all the sort of vituperation and the hate-filled rhetoric that was coming out, not surprisingly to me, the gun sales went way up among liberals, among minorities, among women, among African Americans. Why was that? Now, if you listen to Fox News, they would tell you, well, they're changing their mind about gun control. But if you listen to people that I know who bought guns and own guns and who are liberal people, they said, the conservatives may want their guns to protect them from the government, but I want my guns to protect me from crazy people who have guns. And so what we're looking at is the arming of America, the escalation, the arming of America. And I think that we have to see this particular lunatic in that context. Yes. Not so much in a left-right context, but in a lunatics are getting guns because they think they can affect the political context of the country, and they think they need them for protection.
And I just mentioned 2 things. I mean, there was the shooting of Gabby Giffords, a Democratic congresswoman, in 2011, and there have been at least 1, and I believe 2 Democratic candidates who have withdrawn their campaigns just within the last few weeks because of death threats. So.
Yeah, and the New York Times ran a shameful op-ed about Gabby Giffords in which they said, look at the liberals. They said that they blamed the right wing for the Gabby Giffords shooting, even though the guy was just a nut, and now it's the wheel is coming around. What goes around is coming around.
What's opposite the page is can be opposite the page.
I'm not taking into account, but I was surprised to see that.
I mean, guns control is definitely an American problem. We always still talk about that, but
No,
on the same
no,
level.
it's not an American parliament. We don't have gun control.
No, I mean the idea of
the absence of
gun control, the absence of gun. But what's more worrying also is that even without gun, like yesterday, a French candidate, Nathalie Kosciusko-Morizet, was attacked in
yeah,
in
I want to ask you about that, because here we're in this strange environment now where you control the rhetoric has become more caustic, and
exactly, it's the confrontation is more violent. I mean, I don't know if it has something to do with the networks or with the social media, because it is true that on social media, I mean, any stand you take, Pierre Aski probably knows even more than me, but any position you take, instantly, you don't have someone who says, I don't agree with you. People would go to say, you're an idiot, you're a liar, you're a bastard.
Of course, we think it's more caustic, but I mean, a century ago, France had a Prime Minister, Georges Clemenceau, who regularly would get into duels. So is it really that different?
Now we have duels on Twitter, which is a much more civilized way of fighting, obviously. But it can have consequences in real life. You know, the man who pushed Nathalie Kosciusko-Morizet to the ground, and she was in hospital for 2 days, told her, you're a bloody bobo. And that's the basic insult that you get on social networks when you are a member of the so-called Parisian elite, and people want to attack you, and you know, from the populist movements or the populist background, and that's where it's the beginning of the violence with these words. You know, you are a bobo, so you're not legitimate to give your opinion.
And it's easy to be violent.
And so when it's on Twitter, it doesn't matter. You know, I mean, I've survived thousands of aggressions on Twitter without any problem. When it goes into physical action, like we've had with Nathalie Kosciusko-Morizet, who is a former cabinet minister. You know, she's well known and campaigning in the streets 2 days before the end of an election campaign, where there was a lot of violence in words. It is a worrying sign that things are very tense, despite you know, we are in a very strange environment where you have a very smooth campaign, and there's going to be a huge majority in seats for Mr. Macron's party. But at the same time, you know, the problems and the big divide that was shown by the presidential election obviously hasn't disappeared overnight.
Hasn't disappeared. Of course, there's much mileage to be gotten on this side of the Atlantic by appearing as the anti-Trump, it seems. The Economist has Emmanuel Macron walking on water. I think those are Theresa May's shoes. Upside down. Anyway, the paper gushes about his pro-reform, pro-Europe agenda on the eve of a second round of legislative elections, whereas Pierre Aski was just mentioning, his new centrist La République En Marche party could win as much as 80% of seats. But I want to pick up on what you just said. Amar Abed-Rabo, there are all those who didn't turn out to vote. We had a record abstention rate in the first round, and who feel frustrated, like there's going to be some consensus that I don't belong to.
Yes, but it's their fault. We can do nothing about it. It's I mean, everybody can vote. It's not mandatory, but everybody can and should, but they don't. To finish on what Pierre is saying, the violence in the political speech is also, I mean, in this campaign, it came also from the top, from some of the candidates who were very much tough on justice. They were very much tough on journalists. They were having journalists booed in the meetings, and some of them were physically attacked at the end of some of the meetings. So
some of the rallies, yeah.
Yeah, some of the rallies. So it's I mean, it's not. Of course, it's not Kosciusko-Morizet herself, but her party did, and in a way, we could be seeing this this deterioration. I mean, this degradation. Do we say this in English? Of the debate and of the level. Coming from the top, and it's a problem, definitely.
One of the main problems that we will have to face in the next few months, probably, is the fact that having this huge majority in Parliament, there's going to be no opposition in Parliament, very left over, and because the opposition has collapsed. 56% of Marine Le Pen's voters in the presidential election did not turn out to vote for her candidates in the legislative election. That means her credibility as an alternative has really collapsed in the past month, only in 1 month. And so where is the opposition going to come from? And in France, it comes from the street. That's the immediate thing. And we're going to have some tough debates in the next few weeks, particularly when Mr. Macron implements his program, reforming labor laws. And there's going to be no opposition in Parliament. So the opposition will come from the street if he doesn't handle that very skillfully. So it's going to be a very tricky moment the next few weeks, because we're going to have the appearance of a hugely powerful president with an unprecedented majority in Parliament, but with a very fragile situation under the surface.
Okay, there's the labor reform, which could draw a lot of people out on the street. There's another measure, though, that's coming first, which is one to rein in conflicts of interests among politicians. And the bill's been presented. Unfortunately, the guy presenting it, the new justice minister himself, is under scrutiny over the paying of staff on a European Parliament payroll. Christopher Dickey, this idea that Macron coming in to make politicians more trustworthy, how far will he get with that?
Well, by making that proclamation, he makes himself very vulnerable. Every politician every member of the assembly who comes in, who has had ever any kind of conflict of interest, not necessarily political conflict of interest, is going to come under a lot of scrutiny, and then people will be saying, aha, you see? I mean, Patrick Ferrand, who ran his campaign, what was his conflict of interest? He was not in politics in that sense at the time. He was running an insurance company, and he had his wife buy a building that he then rented space from. Let me tell you, in France, that doesn't sound wildly corrupt. The question with BURLOUX, that's an embarrassing thing, because having the European Parliament paying for people on your staff who are not really working for the European Parliament, that's exactly what people went after Marine Le Pen for, and very similar to what people went after François Fillon for. So those are issues. But the truth is, I feel that, at least for right now, as you were suggesting at the beginning of the show, the sense of optimism that exists here is so much greater than it has been for decades. People are not going to want to give that up quickly because of Patrick Ferrand or BURLOUX or any of these people. The streets are an issue, but I think even there, I think it'll be very interesting to watch. I don't think Macron is somebody who will give in. We have seen in the last 20 years, one government after another fold on labor reform when it came to the streets. And I don't think he's going to give in. I think also he's not like Obama was. He's not going to say, let's all sing Kumbaya and get together. He's going to say, I need to win this battle. This is how I'm going to do it. Get out of the way.
Is the economist right? Does he walk on water these days, Mira Kamdar?
Right now, he is pretty much walking on water, but it is water, so we'll have to check in again in a few weeks or months. But I mean, I agree with what Christopher just says, and I also think that part of the reason for the high rate of extension was people are just completely disillusioned with politics, and what's the point? But part of it was people who maybe didn't want to directly vote for him also thought, okay, his candidates will win. And there was a large sentiment, and at least among a lot of people I spoke to, not necessarily members of the Parisian elite at all, give the guy a chance. Let him, everything else has not worked. It's broken. The system is broken. He's been elected. He's young. He's forward-looking. Give him the tools to give him a chance. See what he can do.
Algerian political cartoonist Dilem also has Macron walking on water. But on Wednesday, where he made his first North Africa visit to Morocco, he's walking on water in the wrong direction, as you're about to see. Here it comes. There you go. He says the man in the wheelchair is supposed to be Algerian President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. It was interesting, these visits abroad, Amar Abedrabo, most notably to North Africa. Staring down Donald Trump in a handshake is easy compared to navigating the waters between Algeria and Morocco.
Definitely. It's the first president who doesn't go to Algeria first. Usually they all go first to Algeria, then to Morocco. So in a way, it's also the success of Moroccan diplomacy, because I remember a few weeks ago, there were like 3 or 4 ministers from François Hollande government that were Moroccan, and the last visit, the last important visit of a head of state to François Hollande was the King of Morocco, and so the first important visit of Emmanuel Macron is to the King of Morocco. So there is something in the air.
To bring back some balance, it's true that during the campaign, Emmanuel Macron went to Tunisia and to Algeria.
Of course, yeah.
And
as a candidate,
and
yes.
he didn't go to Morocco during the campaign. So his first visit as a president, but a private visit, is to Morocco, because he went only with his wife, no cabinet minister, no businessman. He went for the iftar, the dinner breaking the Ramadan fast. And so there was a lot of symbolic gesture. Well, I go to Morocco, but it's not an official visit, and I'll go to Algeria on an official visit. As you said, it's a very tricky balance that France always has to keep between the two countries. But definitely, at the moment, with a weak president in Algeria, Morocco has a more active and maybe more seductive diplomacy, and particularly there was one aspect in the statement that Emmanuel Macron made in Morocco, is the link to Africa, because Morocco is a very active power in sub-Saharan Africa, and Macron said that France and Morocco have the same Africa policy, which was a very interesting statement to be made.
It was, though, a little bit unfortunate that on the day of his visit to Morocco, there were 17, I believe, young protesters arrested in Morocco and sentenced to a multi-year sentence. Dissent in Morocco is a problem, and Macron, as far as I know, did not say anything about that, did he?
He mentioned it, and he said the king told him that he cares for all these people and he would handle this situation in a proper way.
I'm so reassured.
It's the rebellion in the Rif region, which is
the Northern Rif region.
Yes.
According to a columnist from Christopher Dickey's Daily Beast, the man who saved the world this week is not Emmanuel Macron, but former NBA star Dennis Rodman, seen here visiting Pyongyang Zoo on the last day of his visit to North Korea. Christopher, do tell us, how is Dennis Rodman our savior?
Well, the problem is that after a lot of huffing and puffing, the United States doesn't have many options to deal with North Korea. And it tries to work with the Chinese, and it tries to work with South Korea, obviously. But the South Korean card, according to Gordon Chang in this article, the South Korean card is essentially being taken away from it, because there's now a very left-leaning government, new president in South Korea, who says, I'm not going to participate in the efforts to isolate North Korea. I'm not going to climb onto that diplomatic bandwagon and economic bandwagon. So what is Trump going to do? Is he going to say, well, I'm going to be even more threatening? Am I going to push this to the brink of a war even more than I already have, with 3 carrier battle groups in the vicinity of North Korea? Or am I going to find some way to talk to Kim Jong-un, the ruler of North Korea, directly? And who does Kim Jong-un like to talk to? He likes to talk to Dennis Rodman, as we know. So Dennis Rodman goes there, and what does he take with him? He takes a copy of Donald Trump's book, The Art of the Deal. You couldn't be more transparent about a secret back channel than that is. And that is, and the argument of the piece, and I think it's a reasonable argument, is that in a very tense time, this at least opens up another channel for a direct dialogue with Kim Jong-un.
It was stunning that this happened just as the young American who was arrested last year for attempting to steal a souvenir piece came home with limited brain function and a
in
coma.
a coma.
Yeah, this is horrific.
A horrific story, but he was released in that state. A big factor also in what's going on with the tension is the installation that was rushed through right before the end of the previous impeached president's mandate to install a U.S. Missile tracking system known as THAAD, T-H-A-A-D. The Chinese are very upset about it because they feel that that gives the United States the ability to penetrate very deep into their territory.
The new South Korean president says no way.
The South Korean president has frozen 4 of the 6 missiles. 2 are already in place. 4 are not yet active. He's frozen them for the moment on the grounds that, well, there's an environmental assessment that needs to be performed. He's basically buying time because he's between a rock and a hard place because, you know, he's got China. He's got the United States, these rival superpowers, and then the dictator next door with whom he would kind of like to make peace, and his dream is the reunification of South Korea. We were talking about the fall of the Berlin Wall. He's evoked that, in fact, several times. But China's very upset with the United States about what's happening in South Korea right now.
All right, and we'll continue to follow it, of course. Mira Kamdar, I want to thank you. I want to thank Pierre Haski, Amar Abed Rabo, Christopher Dickey. Stay with us, though. Media Watch is next. And we say hello to Emma James.
Hi there.
Earlier, the British Prime Minister had to be whisked away after meeting with survivors from that London fire.
Yes, very much so. She does appear to be becoming something of a scapegoat in all this. And while we still don't know the full scale of the tragedy in terms of the number of lives lost, undoubtedly there's going to be a political cost and possibly even a criminal cost too. This is the cartoon from the London Evening Standard by Christian Adams, crime scene, a very grim image there. And it is something that a lot of people are talking about. The Labour MP in London, David Lammy, has said that he believes people should face charges for corporate manslaughter. Now, he's not saying who yet because we're still waiting for everything to be fully investigated, but certainly criminal charges are a possibility. This from Brian Adcock has Theresa May saying, "I'll dig myself out of this mess." And it says, "Rest in peace, Theresa May's popularity," because she really has been harangued for her what's seen as her lack of compassion for people. This image comparing Jeremy Corbyn when he met survivors and Theresa May there just standing amongst the firefighters, never spoke to any survivors.
This image is from Thursday.
Yes, absolutely. And what has really put her to shame today is she said she couldn't go and meet the members of the public because of security concerns. But today, the Queen of England went along with absolutely no fear for her safety whatsoever. Lots of people remarking on that, saying that basically this makes the security fears argument for May rather redundant. Taking a look in the Guardian newspaper, Polly Toynbee too has written a scathing article. She basically believes this is the end of Theresa May's career. She says that tomb in the sky will be forever Theresa May's monument. She said she avoided contaminating contact with the bereaved and newly homeless. Dead to emotion or empathy, she sealed her fate. But as you said, she did return today. She went to St Clement's Church, one of the places where they've been making collections of all sorts of things that people who've lost everything will now need. But as this journalist points out, she swept into the church without speaking to the public. And if you want to read sort of a full account of what went on at St Clement's Church, Hannah L. Othman from BuzzFeed has been tweeting a great deal about this. She talked about the angry people who have turned out in response to this. She said many of them chanting, "Get her out." She said it wasn't clear whether they meant out of number 10 or out of the church so that they could speak to her. This woman saying, "I want her to come out and face us. What are you doing here on Friday? I lost my home on Tuesday. People lost their lives on Tuesday." Now, this is the image of Theresa May departing, and people apparently were shouting "coward" as she left. So a lot of criticism for her and for the Tories in general. Boris Johnson too, coming under fire for the fact that when he was Mayor of London, he oversaw cuts to the fire service. It meant the closure of 10 fire stations, the loss of 552 firefighting jobs. And when he was challenged on it, this image and a video of him being challenged about these cuts, he said, "Get stuffed." So that's not really the image that the Tories want to be putting forward right now. They're trying to look as though they care, but they're not doing a very good job of that. This Twitter user pointing out that after Boris Johnson offered his thoughts and prayers to those who had lost their homes and were caught up in this fire. Do you know what's better than thoughts and prayers? A properly funded fire department, says this Twitter user. So lots and lots of people very angry indeed. One area where people seem to be united is in defence and in support of the London Fire Brigade. They've been tweeting some of the thank you messages that they've received.
People offering up their homes and the such to house people if need be.
Yes, absolutely. The real spirit of the Blitz kicking in London.
All right, many thanks, Emma James. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in The World This Week.